Yeah, I've seen a big wave hit that.
It's been quite some time now since the residents of Tonga Island spent time outside. The streets that once echoed kids screaming and playing are now deserted. Families have stopped sending children to play outside because toxic ash that remains suspended in the atmosphere. Everyone is struggling right now, and families are making sure they're safe. Although some residents of the outlying islands in Hapai were evacuated to the main island, Tonga Tapu, others refused to leave their homes behind. The problem has invoked psychological implications, waves rushing through, destroying villages. The visual devastation last week affected people psychologically, and it will for some time now. Hanga Tunga Hunga Hapai volcano sits on the seismically active Pacific Ring of Fire. The eruption sent tsunami waves across the Pacific Ocean, so intense that it was heard some 2,300 kilometers away in New Zealand. The eruption was so powerful that space satellites captured an atmospheric shock wave which radiated out from the volcano.
So flying in, I guess initial impressions were that the island looked a lot greyer than a lot of Pacific islands usually do. So you could definitely see like a layer of ash that was settled over most of the greenery. We flew in from the south, so I didn't necessarily see any sort of tsunami damage from that area, as I believe that was sort of centered more around the northern parts or around the volcano. But yeah, definitely a lot of ash, and especially coming into the runway, you could see ash around the sort of sides of the runway that they'd cleared out.
The ash from the eruption was an obstacle for relief works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the initial impression of the ash was a lot worse than I was expecting it to be. So when we landed on the ground, there may have been sort of 10 or 15 knots of wind, and that was picking up maybe a 3 to 4 meter dust cloud, ash cloud, and that was sort of drifting over the airfield. And that was just mostly coming from the surrounding areas, I think, where the wind was picking it up. You could definitely feel it in your eyes, and we obviously had the PPE on so as to not ingest any of it.
A week after the eruption, the island is still dumped with ash. Removing the ash would take some time.
Well, from what we could see, it looked like it was, or the airport itself was was operating. But I think that it would be very challenging to be living there at the moment, especially with all the ash in the air. It must be hard sort of being out of your house and having to clean all that kind of stuff up, and I can imagine that it's going to be quite a while into the future before they can actually sort of clear all of the ash that's around there. Yeah, it's definitely quite a lot.
The citizens of Tonga are yet to recover from the shock. Relief efforts are on. Nations are actively participating in restoring normalcy. The Ring of Fire, that's what they call it. And the Tonga eruption is probably one of many active volcanoes in the vicinity, and experts have said that this is just the beginning.